Hello, welcome to Woodfired Weekly at Manna from Devon Cooking School. This week we're going to be talking about doors. We're going to be looking at the different doors on the different wood-fired ovens we have here and talking about how we use them to precisely control the temperature of the oven. First of all, we're going to be talking about the door on the Moreso Forno, and here we use the door all the time because in the Moreso Forno our main source of heat is always the fire and a bed of embers. Without the door we have to use a much bigger fire. If we're using a bigger fire, we have less control over the heat. So really, for fine control in the Moreso Forno, the door is absolutely essential. Come and have a look how we've got it set up here. So I almost always have the door set up exactly like this. Fire off to one side, behind a heat deflector, the door propped there, flame licking over the top. And that helps to distribute heat evenly behind the door, retains heat behind the door, reflects some heat back, and gives me a lot of control. It means I can use a smaller fire, which saves me a little bit of fuel, but more importantly, it means I have much more control over the distribution of heat. Very important to note that the door is offset. This allows oxygen to flow into the oven, so I can keep the fire burning at all times while still retaining heat behind the door. If I want to try and create stability in the Moreso Forno, then I'll use the door and completely shut it, with a bed of embers set up on one side, even possibly both sides, to give me an even temperature across the oven and stabilise the heat. But then I'll only have embers because I don't need airflow to create a flame. That means I'll get a temperature which will last at a fairly even level and an even distribution across the oven. Now we're up with the Bushman oven, the big refractory oven, and here we use the door in a number of different ways. And it's really useful, and in this case we have got a really flexible door. So Jay, the designer of these ovens, has really thought about this. So the door has got a lovely tilt. It can tilt forward, it can sit back, it can twist and sit in the doorway at an angle, which gives you a lot of versatility, and not all ovens have this, especially if they have a swing door, which is really a bit one-dimensional. So with this door we've got 5 settings that I tend to use. First of all, door off. Door off, fire's burning brightly, I want a flame going over the top of the oven, or I'm heating up the oven, or a flame going over the oven to cook pizzas. The fire needs lots of oxygen. I can't offset it to one side like I can with the Moreso, so typically here I'll leave the door open and just let the fire get loads and loads of oxygen. And if I show you what happens if I put the door in place when I'm trying to keep a fire burning, and I'm sure you can guess, I'm just going to starve the fire of oxygen and stifle the fire completely. And that happens in a matter of seconds. Bursts back into flame, of course, as soon as it gets oxygen, but we don't want to do that. And if we've got smouldering embers producing smoke in the oven, we don't want to close the door with some food in there, because we just get the wrong kind of smoke building up in the oven and tainting the food. The second setting is diagonal. And if I've added some wood to the oven, or I've just lit the fire and I want to get it burning nice and brightly, I might want to accelerate the speed of air moving through the fire. So I'm going to pop this wood on. That's only a tiny bit for demonstration purposes. If I set the door like that, so there we immediately see an acceleration of air through the fire. This is really the Venturi effect, where air is compressed and into a narrower space and accelerates. And we can use that if we just want to get the fire burning a bit more quickly, or if we want to clear smoke. So we want to get a bright fire going as quickly as possible so that we get rid of any smoke, and that might be if you don't want to upset your neighbours, or if you're at an event and you've got an oven at an event, you want to clear smoke quickly so you don't sort of smoke out the field. That does that. And if I want to, let's say I want to sort of cook a dish which wants to be cooked a little bit slowly and then quickly, so I might want to cook a dish where I'm making a sauce, let's say, and then I want to pop some fish into that sauce and roast the top of that fish very quickly. So I want to go from a relatively cool oven to a nice hot flame very quickly. that's when I might use this technique. The third setting is when the fire has died down to embers. So we'll just let that happen and come back to it in a few minutes. My fire has died down to embers, and this is a nice setting for kind of roasting a piece of meat. It's going to take a little while. The heat is not fluctuating too much with the flame, and there's less chance of scorching. So I'll quite often use this. But if I've got a fully heated oven and a bed of embers which have just died down, initially it may be too hot to roast with the door on. So I'll just cook with the door off. And then as the heat falls, I progressively move the door into place. So an initial setting might be just back here. There's a little bit of heat being reflected, stabilizing the temperature. The fire can still get oxygen, so those glowing embers, which are still combusting, remember, so they still need oxygen to keep burning nicely, still glow and still emanate heat. As the embers fall further in temperature, the door goes a little bit further on. On this setting, with the door set back here, the flue is fully open. As the embers fall in temperature, I may move the door forward. If I push it like that, the door is now almost shut. A little bit of oxygen will get in there to allow the fire to keep burning. The flue is mostly cut off. Still a little bit open so that any fumes building up in there can escape, but mostly cut off. And that will retain much more heat than having the door pulled out. I may even pitch the door forward a tiny bit so I cut off even more of the flue and prop it up like that. And I might do this if I'm smoky and I just want the flue open a crack so that smoke can drift over the food and disappear and not build up in the oven. So that would be the fourth setting, and then the fifth setting is when the door is completely closed. In this case it means it's pitched forward and close up to these metal surrounds. I typically wouldn't do this if there were any embers in the oven, unless those embers were completely dead, because the embers are still emanating fumes, and on this setting the flue is completely isolated from the oven. In some cases, if you've got a swing door, you won't be able to isolate the flue unless you've got a baffle in your flue. Finally then, we're just going to look at the door on the Alfa oven, on the stainless steel oven, and in this case we can set the door so it's tight to the oven and cuts off the flue. So we can slide it right into there. The flue is now here and isolated from the oven. If we're trying to cook with retained heat, we can sit it back here. So it's reflecting heat back into the oven, but still allowing plenty of oxygen. And there is a little perforation down here which allows some oxygen to get through if we're trying to keep a little bed of embers glowing or a fire burning quietly. Another setting which I sometimes use on the Alfa, because it's not designed for it, but it just allows for it, is to prop it up. So it sits against the left hand side, sweeps up underneath the thermometer, and then I just kind of prop it there. This allows me to keep a bright fire burning on the right hand side of the oven whilst concentrating the heat over on the left. So if I really want to sort of intensify the heat for a period of time, I might do that. I wouldn't do it if I was trying to cook pizzas because it would just be too fussy. I'd keep a bigger fire burning, but it allows me to keep a smaller fire burning and intensify the heat. So it's another little sort of tweak just to give me a little bit more control. As with the Bushman, I can angle the door a little bit to accelerate airflow through the fire if I want to get the fire burning brightly or revive it quickly. Another little bit of control. So that's a quick run through on how to use the doors on the 3 ovens we have here at the school. Remember, it's always about trying to control the heat in the oven and control the rate at which you cook. If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do provide a new video every week. We'll provide information and notes about this video on our blog and put a link to that below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.